And we should recognize that the issues today are literally survival. It's kind of remarkable to look at the massive coverage of the two conventions and see that the most crucial issues that have arisen in all of human history are not mentioned. I try to find a word, the critical difference between the parties, whatever you think about them, there actually is a chasm on two crucial, essential issues of survival. Are we going to be able to address the growing environmental catastrophe in time, or are we not? That's a question that has to be answered within a decade or two. And whatever you think of the Democrats, Trump is alone in the world in pressing the accelerator to race to disaster. If this malignancy is not removed, we may not survive another 4 years of this, may get to even irreversible tipping points. If not, it'll certainly be much harder to deal with the problems that remain in the brief period ahead. Virtually no mention. The other issue, which is equally existential, is the threat of terminal nuclear war. It's higher now than it has been even during the Cold War, and increasing. To the extent that the doomsday clock last January, the analysts dropped minutes, moved to seconds. And since then, Trump has made it worse, dismantling the last remnants of the arms control regime, which set some constraints on the threat of total destruction, and moving to develop new, more threatening weapons in violation of past treaties, which essentially entices others to do the same. That means limiting the prospect of survival, the darkening the shadow that we've been living under for 75 years. No mention. Lots of talk about other things, but not the two questions that human beings now face for the first time in human history, the questions whether the human experiment will continue in the short term. We're not talking about millennia or centuries. We're talking about decades. And nobody's talking about it. It's a shocking comment on the whole social order. There's many other problems, urgent, significant ones. But if these aren't solved, everything else is moot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's a relationship between that silence and the kind of stoking of fear that is so much a part of the public political consciousness. In other words, is there a possibility that they know, or we know, right, that this is moving toward the end, and so rather than deal with that, right, we sort of end up in a state of constant, fear mongering and hate production and a kind of a terror of the end of the world as we know it, but brought very small, right? The end of a social world as we know it in our neighborhood, in our town, in our community, rather than an end of the world as we know it in a big sense.
Well, fortunately, there are people who are working hard on it, not ignoring it. Take the environmental crisis. Take Sunrise Movement, group of young people actively working to try to bring this issue to the core of public attention and activism. As you know, they sat in on congressional offices. They received some support from the young, some of the young representatives who came in on the Sanders wave, especially Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Gained the support of a Democratic senator, senior senator, Ed Markey, who's been interested in the environment. They managed to put the question of a Green New Deal on the legislative agenda. shortly before, lots of ridicule, dismissal, who cares about that? It's only essential for human survival. Only that. And it is. Some form of Green New Deal is essential for human survival. There are forms that are quite feasible, that fall well within our capacities. And unless we implement them within the next few years, we can say goodbye to each other. Okay? So these young people succeeded in doing it. That's exciting. Then they have been working with the climate strike last year. Huge effort of young people to try to awaken the world. The Extinction Rebellion, others. The activism that's continued and compelled the Democratic National Committee, which doesn't want any of this, but compelled them to at least include in the program policies which are not enough, but which could make a significant dent.